The Miami Heat can jumpstart their regular season by taking this one thing very, very seriously. We're going to talk about what that one thing is, but before we do that, let's make sure that we're subscribing to the Heat Digest Nation so that way you guys can stay updated to all things Miami Heat related throughout the regular season. The one thing that I think the Miami Heat can really use and take seriously to try and jumpstart their regular season is, of course, the in-season tournament. Yes, we are back at it again with the in-season tournament, the second installment of the tournament since its addition. I believe it was a success last year, and I think it'll be a success this year. The Miami Heat will be in Group B of the Eastern Conference, along with the Indiana Pacers, who were the runner-up last year, losing to the Los Angeles Lakers in the championship game, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Toronto Raptors, and the Detroit Pistons. The Miami Heat are not known for taking the regular season very seriously, but I think the in-season tournament is exactly what they can do to try and jumpstart their kind of slow start out of the gates. Yes, they're 4-5 right now through 9 games. They're coming off of a big win against Minnesota, which we'll definitely talk about in a minute here. But it still feels like there's more questions than answers. The third quarter, the lack of just urgency from some of the key players, the inconsistent play, the struggles at home. There's just so much, the rebounding. There's just so much that really hasn't been answered by the Miami Heat. But this in-season tournament could be something that gives the team kind of a focus early on to come together towards a common goal. Again, something that the Miami Heat are not necessarily going to raise a banner per se for when it's if they're able to win it, but it's something that they can, like a benchmark, to try and kind of look back and say, we were 4-5 through the first 9, but once the in-season tournament hit, we're able to string together some games, string together some good quality basketball, and now look at us where we are when June comes, or May, April, along with the other time of the year with postseason action. But before we continue, let's break down a little bit here for the in-season tournament. Now, the way it is going to go, again, as you saw, there are 3 groups on each side of the NBA conference. A, B, and C, both in the West and in the East. What is going to happen after group play? The in-season tournament will move to knockout stages where the ones who will go are the three top teams from each group of each conference, and then 1 wild card, which will be from each conference as well, for a total of 8 teams to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and then the eventual championship game that I still believe will be in Las Vegas. What you see over here on the screen are the tiebreakers. If there is a situation where 2 teams are tied with the same record, you go head-to-head in group play. Then you go point differential and points scored, which is kind of the new thing that a lot of people weren't fully aware of last year. I mean, we saw a little bit of some scuffles happen at the end of games because teams are trying to get their points up or their point differential to be better. Then we go to record from last season, 2023-2024, regular season specifically, and then a random drawing. But again, don't think that's ever really going to happen. Hasn't happened yet. Again, very short time for the in-season tournament, but hasn't been a need for us to get to that far in the tiebreaker situations. And those are the tiebreakers for each for the teams should that time come. Now we move over to the groups. Like I mentioned, Group A, B, and C for the Eastern Conference. I already talked about Group B with the Miami Heat. Now, Group A is going to be the Knicks, the Magic, the 76ers, the Nets, and the Hornets. Group C is going to be the Celtics, Cavs, Bulls, Hawks, and Wizards. Going to give you guys my quick rundown for what I feel like the in-season tournament will kind of, I guess, a prediction, if you will. Real quick for each pool, for each group. Group A, I think it's going to be the Knicks. Why? The Magic, without Paolo for at least in a couple more weeks. The 76ers, they're going to get Embiid back for the start of the in-season tournament. But how good will that knee hold up is the real question. Now you have to talk about him getting used to playing with Paul George getting used to playing with him. Tyrese Maxey is now out, so I just don't think the 76ers are going to be at full strength. The Nets, in purgatory. They are in no man's land right now as an organization. They're just kind of trying to stay competitive. They have a few good pieces, but I don't think they're going to be able to match up with the Knicks and with the talent that they have over across the way for New York. And then the Charlotte Hornets, the only real contender, I feel like, to the Knicks, simply because they're a young, fun team that could thrive in the in-season tournament kind of style. We saw how the games were last year. Before the in-season tournament even starts, I considered this one a win, the whole tournament this year, because the courts are much better. I hope you guys agree with me. I think the courts are already off to a better start than they were last year. But talking about the actual teams, I do believe the Hornets are the only contenders for the Knicks in that Group A situation. Just because, again, LaMelo Ball, he is seeming to have a kind of not coming out party, because I still think he has another level, but just a better season than he had last year. The Hornets as a whole are just always, like I said, a fun team to see out in the open court, led by LaMelo, led by some of these young talents. So I think they're going to be a team that just thrives in that environment. For Group B, the Bucks, Pacers, Heat, Raptors, Pistons. I think this is the group for the Heat to win, and that's why I'm so high on them taking this in-season tournament so seriously. Because if you break it down, the Bucks are in DEFCON 5, DEFCON 1, Red Alert, hit the panic button, the whole shebang. 2-8 as of I'm recording this. There's no sign of an answer anytime soon because Damian Lillard has some great games. Giannis has had some great games. The team has had some okay games, and you still haven't won. I don't think they're going to find the answer in the season tournament. I just don't think they're going to find an answer anytime soon, and the Giannis sweepstake will continue to kind of just progress until eventually that bubble pops. The Pacers, similar to the Bucks. Yes, last year at this time, they were looked at as a kind of what the Hornets. I said the Hornets would be a young, fun team that are led by Tyrese Halliburton, that are led by, at the time, Buddy Hield and Benedict Mathurin and Miles Turner and the crew. Now, Halliburton has had a very slow start of the season. He's still dealing with that hamstring injury from what I've heard. The Pacers just don't seem to be that same team. And with that being said, I just think the Miami Heat can handle them very easily, whether at home or on the road. The Toronto Raptors, I like them in a year. But right now, the core is still young. You have Grady Dick. You have RJ Barrett. You also obviously have Scotty Barnes. Other than that, though, are you really nervous of the Toronto Raptors? Probably not. So, in the end, I do think the Miami Heat would take that matchup. I'm not saying it would be an easy one, but I still think Miami Heat would come away with the victory. The Detroit Pistons are the only team that really scare me in this group, if I'm being honest, with being a Heat fan and rooting for the Miami. Detroit is what I think the Raptors would be maybe in 2 years' time. They are led by Cade Cunningham. They have some more young pieces in Jaden Ivey, in I believe Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. So they have the recipe of, again, a young team that is looking at the in-season tournament as their NBA championship and that are going to go out guns blazing trying to win it. Obviously, the Heat did play the Pistons already in, believe, week 2 of the regular season. Handled them. Wasn't an easy win, though. It took a kind of a very good performance by the Miami Heat and a few runs, some key runs, to really sway the game in their favor because the Pistons did out-rebound them. Cade Cunningham did have a field day in that first half. So there's still some situation there where the Pistons could feel like we could take the Miami Heat the distance and really force them to have to play their best basketball. But in the end, I do think the Miami Heat will come away with that Group B win. Group C, it's the death group. Why? The Bulls, Hawks, and Wizards have no hope. I'm going to keep it a buck with y'all. They have no hope because the Celtics and the Cavaliers have been the best 2 teams in the Eastern Conference, and they're going to be in the same group. With that being said, I don't care who you're going with because you both are gonna make it to the quarterfinals or the knockout stages because, like I mentioned, you have one from each group and then a wild card. I see the Cavaliers handling the Bulls, handling the Wizards. I see the Celtics handling the Bulls, handling the Hawks, handling the Wizards, and then one will have a win over the other. Maybe they even both have a situation where they're tied. So they're going to have the best record out of any of the other teams that are remaining in the Eastern Conference, which brings me again. So now for me, quick rundown of my preview for the in-season tournament. I have the Knicks, I have the Heat, I have either the Boston Celtics or Cleveland Cavaliers, and then I have the other of the Celtics and Cavaliers, whatever one you guys want to pick. But those are my 4 out of the East, which brings me to my final point here. Do the Heat really need to win this in-season tournament? The answer, I believe, is yes. Why? This is the power rankings according to NBA.com going into this weekend. Obviously, you see there last week, the Heat were ranked number 12. They've dropped down ever since. I believe now they're at 16. Their offensive rating is 111. That's 18th in the NBA. Their defensive rating, 112. That's 15th in the NBA. Their pace, 97. That's 25th in the NBA. The only bright spot about last week, well, 2 bright spots, I guess you can say. The Timberwolves win, because that was a big win. I said at the beginning of the week that I thought they could go 3-0. They're a Nikola Jovic layup away and a great ATO situation from Eric Spoelstra away from going 0-3. So kudos to the Heat for pulling out that one on the road. The other bright spot, you saw some nice moments there from second-round picks and some young pieces that maybe the Heat, from what I'm hearing, they love, and they feel like they could maybe have found something, a little diamond in the rough, as they always do. But those are really the only good takeaways from last week. The Heat still had the same problems rebounding the ball. They still had some situations where bad late-game execution cost them games, specifically that Sacramento Kings game. In the end, I just don't feel like the Heat, through these first 9 games, have played Miami Heat basketball. Again, there have been some bright spots. They've won some games, but even the wins don't feel so dominant and so Heat worthy, if I'm being honest. Like I mentioned, that Pistons game, it didn't feel, yes, the Miami Heat pulled it away, but it, in my opinion, was harder than it needed to be. It was harder than it needed to be. So I just feel like the Miami Heat right now, the reason I feel they should take this seriously, and I'll kind of wrap it up with this little note, I see them being the Indiana Pacers. Let's not forget, the Indiana Pacers last year, they were looked at what? A young team led by one of the best young guards in the association, one of the best passers. Could he lead this into a possible playoff team? They go on a run in the in-season tournament. They find a rivalry with the Milwaukee Bucks. They run through the East and go into the tournament championship game. They make it to the championship game, and yes, they got done in by the Lakers. I think it was just a bad matchup for the Pacers at the time. Obviously, the Lakers playing inside. The Pacers weren't guarding really anybody on defense at that point, really throughout the entire season last year. But they made it there. And where did the Pacers end up when the postseason came? They were the Eastern Conference finalists behind the Celtics. They beat the Bucks in the playoffs. They beat the Knicks in the playoffs. Yes, you can say that the Knicks, were injured, but not really. Like, they still had some of their key guys. And yes, you can say it took a Game 7 of historic proportions for the Pacers to win and move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they still did it. That's my point. They did what I believe the Miami Heat can do. I like a situation where if we look at those two Pacer teams last year and this year's Heat team, they're very similar. I think the Heat have the edge in talent and skill. I think they have the better coach. I think they have the better foundation to do what they did, but better. And let's not forget, the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, yes, they were swept. I understand that. But they were in all 4 of those games. They were winning all 4 of those games. They were seconds away from taking Game 1 from the Celtics in TD Garden. They were seconds away from winning in Indiana in Game 3. So who's to say that he can't do that? I firmly believe if the Miami Heat take this in-season tournament seriously, not even saying win the thing, but get to the semifinals. Let's talk about the Miami Heat have a chance to win the in-season tournament because blank, because they are here, because they've handled their group play, because they won the quarterfinals, because they have a favorable matchup in the semifinals. Just get to the championship game. If you get to the championship game, I'll consider that a win. Even the semifinals, I'll consider that a win. I just want to see the Miami Heat take this in-season tournament as seriously as possible, because if you do that, it's a benchmark. It's not the goal. It's not even a milestone, in my opinion, but it's a benchmark. It's a launching pad for you in the rest of the season, because now between the November and December calendar, you can realize, hey, we have something here. What worked? Let's continue to bottle that up and push that into the Christmas break, push that into the new year, and continue that into the spring. With that being said, leave down in the comments the priority or the level of priority that you would give if you were the GM, the coach, or the owner of the Miami Heat for winning the in-season tournament. How serious do you think that he should take it? And again, what level of priority are you giving it if you were in that organization right now going into Tuesday's game? With that being said, we appreciate you, and we hope you will stick with us on the next episode of Heat Digest.